Okay, that sound good, Joe? Sounds good to me. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Sandy Beach, and I'm an alcoholic. How you doing? It's good to see everybody here tonight. For those of you that are here for the first time, the purpose of this meeting is to have fun. And the purpose of the step we're talking about is to get near God. Those are the things we repeat every week. So during the meeting, if you want to get coffee or go to the bathroom or stand up or whatever, go ahead. We won't bother anybody. We're here to just have a nice time. Wrap it up at 9:15. And I had one announcement that I forgot to get my hand up when Diana was making them. There will be a meeting of the Controlled Drinkers Group of South Tampa at St. Leo's Parish Hall starting at 5 p.m. on Thursday and running through Saturday at 2 p.m., at which time the group will stagger down Bayshore Boulevard to Ballast Point, where they will conduct a sing-along at the Tomb of the Unknown Drunk. And so, in case you want to attend something really interesting, you can mark that one down. I can hear Brian laughing out there. Thanks, Bob. Oh, boy. I guess I never told you about my sponsor, except in that one slide, which was not a true portrait of him. But we were both in the Marine Corps. We were both captains, and he was sober like a year and a half, and then he got a hold of me. And the home group was in a little Catholic church right outside of the Quantico Marine Base, and he was the secretary, the treasurer, the grapevine rep, the central office rep, the program chairman, and the coffee maker. And the group, it was a speaker meeting. We had 2 speakers come down from Washington, drive about an hour to get there. And we had about 8 people in the group. And 5 of them were sober, and the other ones would show up, and they were drunk sometimes and sober sometimes. And we had one jockey named Dave. He was an ex-jockey. He's about 4'6", and he'd be sober one week and not sober the next week. And it was just a real group of characters that were assembled in this group. So my sponsor says to me, after I've been sober about 7 months, he said, we're going to go to the meeting early tonight and have a business meeting. And I'm going, man, that sounds strange. So we get there, and of course, and all the stuff for the meeting was in the podium. And you pushed it behind, it had a door on it that you locked, and everything was in it. The sugar, cups, coffee, the coffee pot, the signs to go on the wall, you know, and the literature and all that. So he pulls the podium out, sets it up, and I'm the only one sitting there. I'm the guy, I'm sitting in the front row. And he calls the meeting to order. And he said, we're having a business meeting, and I've been the chairman, program chairman, secretary, treasurer, blah, 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 all the way through for a couple of years, and it's traditional in AA to rotate the jobs in the program. And we do it on a volunteer basis. Do I hear any volunteers? You know. So what are you going to do? So I had to raise my hand. And at which point I was given the key to the Catholic Church and the combination to the podium, which was like the first thing I'd ever been trusted with in a long time. And I became this, and I enjoyed it. I'd bring some cake over, and I'd do this and do that. But the part that I want to tell you about that was so hard was I had to go ask people to speak at the meeting. And when you do that, you might get rejected. And so it was very terrifying. I would start up to somebody, and then I'd run up and change my mind and walk over here. And I had about, I think he had the speakers lined up for about 7 weeks. So I had 7 weeks to ask 2 people to come and talk. And at the end of 6 weeks, I hadn't asked anybody. I almost asked several people. I came this close to asking. But the time was running out, so I was with this guy. He was an Army major from Fort Belvoir, Jack. I still remember his name. And I just said, you want to talk down there, Jack? And I was holding my breath. And he said, yeah, I'd love to. And I went, oh, great. And I never did get the second speaker. That was about all I could handle. You know what I mean? So it comes that night, and my sponsor has gone and talked to all the other groups and said, come on, this is Sandy's first night. We want to have a big attendance. So there's probably like 20 people, which was huge for that group. And they're all shaking my hands. Oh, you're going to do great. I'm around. So I read the preamble, and Jack comes in, and Dave, the jockey, comes in, and he's been drinking. And he's sitting in the front row, going out in the bottle in the bush and having a drink, and then he's coming back. But he did that a lot, and he always behaved himself, so we didn't have to worry about that. I just observed it. So I read this. I think we passed the basket and the announcement, that kind of stuff. And so I pretended like there was another speaker coming, you know, like for our first speaker, Jack. And Jack gets up, and I didn't know, but he was drunk as a skunk. And he got up to the podium and he said, "Hi, my name is Jack, and I'm here tonight to resign from Alcoholics Anonymous." And I am staring straight ahead. I'm not looking at my sponsor. I mean, I'm just... And he started in this long talk about how he came to AA 3 or 4 years ago, and he didn't know how to drink successfully. And now that he's been going to all these meetings, they taught him how to drink. And he was so grateful. And he's been drinking a fifth a day for 6 months, and everything's wonderful. He's not getting any trouble, and he had a fifth and a half today. And as you can see, I'm fine. And I just had these visions of General Service Office coming down in handcuffs, and I'm let off, and a threat to AA, you know, and all this stuff. Later on, I found out my sponsor was falling on the floor laughing. He thought it was so funny. So I'm wondering, how do we get this guy off? He goes for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and finally, the jockey saves the day. He was sitting in the front row listening to this fifth and a half, and I'm fine. And finally, he couldn't take it anymore, and he just jumped up and he went, "You're a goddamn liar," to the speaker. "I drink a fifth and I get all screwed. You come out and I got a bottle out here, and I'll watch you drink." And they went out. And I never moved. I just sat right there, and my sponsor came up to the podium. He said, "Well, I guess that'll wrap it up for tonight." But I invite you all to come back next week, because we have no idea what we're going to see. And so if you've ever had a job in AA and it didn't go too well, welcome to the club, because it happens. As you know, we talk about our steps here at this meeting, and we're going to get to step 6 tonight. And prior to that, I always like to just set the stage for that for anybody who hasn't been here before. And I think I always start with the sentence that the 12 steps are a plan for living to replace your plan, which sucks. That's the basic premise. A lot of people want to know, well, why should I try this? You know, and I'm studying it, and you're doing all that. And the real reason is that it's obvious your plan for living is not working, or you wouldn't be here. I mean, it's just not anything that you can defend. I was wearing a wristband from a nut ward, and that people used to say that. They say, "Oh, you know, you talk well. We like what you say. You studied all these things in the Ivy League, and you have this and that. But we just don't like to listen to a guy with a wristband from a nut ward." And so wherever you have come from, if you ended up here, if there's somebody brand new here tonight, I'm going to stick my neck way out, and I'm going to bet that your last year was bad. That would just be my hunch. That your last year was a bad year, and you would have, based on the results of your last year, you would have a hard time selling the guy next to you on your plan for living. So this is a result-oriented program. And so we don't debate the wisdom of this plan versus the wisdom of another plan. We just talk about the results of this plan versus the results of your plan. And I think we talk about this every week. There you are, and you're looking like you may not make it through the meeting, a little shaky, strange color in the face, eyes not really looking in any one direction, no money in your pocket, people looking for you all over, no hopes of employment, doctor talking about not buying any long-playing records, and that's sort of where you're at. And then you come to AA, and here's all the people. And you get to look at them, and you see, as we talked about, look at the parking lot, all those nice cars that are out there. The people here own those cars. They're not stolen. These are owned. We actually own the car. We have current registrations. We have jobs. We have people who will say nice things about us without being paid. We have all kinds of things. And you can just see, as you look in meetings, that people have something that is very intangible, but it's there, and it's a quality about enjoying life without alcohol and not faking it. You can tell that the people here have found something, it's hard to put your finger on what it is, that enables them to be happy in the middle of all kinds of stuff going on and in the middle of not drinking. And so that's the freedom from alcohol that the program can give us. So if you're new, the reason for trying this is simply because you've been banging your head long enough, and let your ego get out of the way and take a handkerchief out and hold it up and just go, okay, unconditional surrender. What do I do? And all you do is follow the guidance of the group, the sponsor, the literature, down the path of the 12 steps. And your job is to critique the results. So every 3 months, you're entitled to go, well, I've been following the plan for 3 months, and then you get to say whatever's happening. And in most cases, like 99.999, the report is, it is going much better. I can't believe it, but it's going much better. I feel more healthy, I feel this, I have a different way of looking at things. And then you can report back in 3 more months and 3 more months. And as long as you're sober, I think you'll be able to see every 3 months, you'll be able to see something new that has happened in your life that makes your life more comfortable, makes you feel better about yourself. And it's a never-ending process, and it's always moving towards this spiritual goal of union with our higher power, where we are totally taken care of, and we don't need anything from other people, money, anything from the outside world. We can just have a sense of well-being that comes from within. And if that sounds like too far-fetched, what used to happen when you were drinking? You had a sense of well-being that set in, and it came from within. You remember that, about the third drink? You're sitting in there, all nervous and everything, and all of a sudden it kicked in, and you just sat there going, this is more like it. Yeah, this is more like it. Now I can get comfortable in the world. And so that's what happens in the program, but it's not as fast as that. And so we need some patience. You need to trust the people that went before you, that it will in fact happen, and that you are no exception. We talked about the fact that the first step is so essential, and so every week we'll just go over that, because our literature suggests that even people who have been sober for 5, 10 years and not having that wonderful, comfortable sobriety that they see other people having, that it all stemmed from the fact that when they took the first step, they didn't take it 100%. That there was some reservations in the back of their mind that they weren't quite as bad as the next person. They weren't really powerless over alcohol and your life was unmanageable. You rephrased that to yourself without realizing it, and you said, yeah, I got lots of troubles. Alcohol's really kicking my butt, and my life is really messed up. But that doesn't go far enough in saying I'm powerless over alcohol, because as we say it the other way, part of us is saying, and it'll get straightened out, and then I'll be able to manage, and I'll be able to do this. Whereas powerless means you will never be able to do anything about the disease of alcoholism. You will always be led back to the first drink, and when you do, all hell will break loose. And the reason for that is through willpower, we're able to stay sober. There's people who have gritted their teeth and stayed physically dry for extended periods of time. I had a friend up in Washington who did it for 10 years as a member of Congress. And then when he ran for the Senate, all hell broke loose as soon as he got elected. And I asked him, and then he's got about 15 years now in the program. And he said, those 10 years were the worst 10 years of my life. No, my staff didn't want to work for me. I was so awful to them. And it was, in other words, it's possible to stay dry, but it's not possible to stay happy and sober. And that's the difference. And what is offered here is what our literature suggests is God's will for us is to be happy, joyous, and free. And nothing short of that. Happy, joyous, and free. It applies to all of us. So in taking this first step, if you're new, you really have to look at this and see that you haven't rationalized a little bit in your head that I'm almost powerless. Because as we've said each week, if you say that, then you're almost going to do the steps. You're almost going to really follow your sponsor. You're almost going to get everything that you can out of the meeting, and you're almost going to get sober, which is like almost having a parachute. You know what I mean? It's not there. It's just not there. And so as time goes along, the program becomes a burden. Oh, it's a sacrifice to go to those meetings instead of, I can hardly wait to get there. See, once you've surrendered, this becomes our lifeline. We can't live without it. So there's no debate going on on whether I go to a meeting. It would be like debating whether I'm going to take my next breath. Oh, I think I'll skip breathing tonight. I mean, who the hell would debate that? It's a life or death situation. So once we surrender in that first step, then 3 years from now, we're not going, well, I don't really need it, da-da-da. It's over. We've just, alcohol has now become arsenic or any other poison. And we're just not going to take it because it's going to kill us. But there's no way we can do that without help. And that's what this step is saying. It's impossible to learn your way out of powerlessness. You can't study the literature and study about alcoholism and stay sober. We need spiritual help to stay sober. That's what this is all about. Because there will come a day when you will have no defense against the first drink. It'll just happen. And we weren't spiritually prepared that day, and we just committed an act of insanity. We just went out and somebody said, want a drink? Yeah, thanks. Woo. And we just wonder what happened. And we didn't have this protective shield around us, this invisible spiritual aura that would never allow that to happen. There would be no struggle against alcohol. As we talk about in AA, the spiritual solutions to problems are different than intellectual solutions. We don't figure problems out. They are removed. They're just lifted out so that we don't have to struggle with them anymore. We just don't struggle with the first drink. It's lifted out a day at a time. So the surrender in that first step is so essential that we take a lot of time each meeting talking about it. Then we get to, having said that we are totally powerless, we're going to have to change our mind about a higher power in order to do something about being powerlessness. So we go through the big debate of, am I going to allow God to exist? Which is what the second step is all about. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't exist, and until I allow him to, he won't exist. That sort of arrogance. And we have a lot of childhood ideas about God and all these things that are thrashing around inside of us. And we sit with this and talk with our sponsor, and we realize that we can rely on the experience of other people, and that we really can, after not too many weeks in AA, come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. And as that realization, that changing of our mind, all we're doing is saying, yeah, I admit to the possibility that could happen. And that's the beginning. And that just opens the door. Pretty soon you realize, yeah, I'm willing to have that happen to me. And we have a step that says we made a decision to turn our will and our life over to this power as we understand this power. And so that is the decision that means we're really going to work the program. When we decide to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God, we are deciding to put this power source as our goal for the rest of our lives, that is where we're going to put all of our eggs, in that basket, and we're not going to rely on anything else. This is what we're going to rely on. And this is a hard decision to make, because we can't see this higher power. We can't find the proof of its existence. But our AA friends constantly say, look, there's no way that we can prove the existence of this higher power, but let us go back and review the disease of alcoholism, and you will see that there's no choice but to believe in this, because there's no other way to make it. Absent a higher power, we're left out there with no defense against the first drink. And so this process goes on, and finally we make this decision, and it's made way down in the gut. And the decision really is, I am committed to work the rest of these steps as hard as I can so that this contact with a higher power can take place. And then we find out what the problem is. The problem is that this power, this spiritual source, was born inside of all of us. The Big Book says the fundamental idea of God was born inside of all of us. So we don't have to go to Tibet, and we don't have to go to the Vatican, and we don't have to go to South America. We don't have to go anywhere. You just have to go to your meetings. And we're going to find that the channel into this power will be opened by working the 12 steps. As we see in our fourth step, we find out that character defects, or Bill uses the word blockages. That's my favorite word for what character defects are. They're blockages. Forget whether they're good or bad or this or that, because that, guilt and pride and all that stuff can get in the way. These are blockages that are blocking me and you from access to this power that can enable us to see the world differently and to be more comfortable in it. That's what this power can do. But it can't do it unless we, through our own will, remove these blockages. That's what free will is all about. We can choose to leave it blocked and continue to run our life by our ego, or we can surrender to this idea and spend all this time, same amount of time, clearing up this inventory. So we talked about the fourth step and how these character defects are nothing more than instinctual drives gone crazy. If you talk about what is a grown-up, not that there's any of them in this room, including me, but a grown-up would be defined as someone who has been able to manage their instinctual drives so that they aren't running their life. They are free to live their life, and these instinctual drives just supply the energy so that we seek security, reproduce, make love, make money, do these things. But those drives are there so we'll survive as human beings. They're not the purpose of being alive. But before we get into a spiritual program, they look like that's the whole point of life, is to answer these drives that are going on inside of me because they're driving me crazy. And until I get enough money, this financial thing won't shut up. Until I get enough sex, this lust thing won't shut up. Until I get enough security and get to be the president of something, this security thing won't shut up. So what other answer is there? Of course I'm going out trying to get as much as I can to shut this stuff up so I can have some peace of mind. The only thing that ever shut them up was booze. And we come in here and we go, well, there's a flip side to this. We don't have to meet all those demands. What if we had the spiritual power to reduce those demands so they're not bugging you? They're just down to their regular size. They're there as just a low-level energy to keep us moving, but they're not driving us crazy. That's what the spiritual solution looks like, is to take all that stuff that's driving us crazy and have it spiritually reduced. And that can only happen by becoming unself-centered, because these drives are totally generated by self. Selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of our problem. And the only way to become unself-centered is to become God-centered. A self-centered person, as we talked last time, upon hearing that they're self-centered, says, that's right, and I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix being self-centered. And, you just sit there, well, how? I don't know. I'm going to be more considerate of others, and I'm going to, and everything starts with I. And so to get out of this thing, we have to make God the center, which is the true center of the universe. And once we have that as the true center, then everything comes in perspective. Then it starts looking right. Oh yeah, now I see it. God's the center, and I'm out here, one little grain of sand on the beach, one little helper in this whole vast army of his children all over the earth. And so I don't have all the responsibility I used to have being in charge of the earth. I'm just over here helping making the beach look good. And that's my job. And if God wants me to do something else, I'll go do that. But I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to have a great big plan for the rest of my life. I don't have to any of those things. I just have to maintain this contact one day at a time, and all will be taken care of. Because all we want taken care of is our attitude. You know, people can be job hunting with a good attitude, and they find job hunting just as much fun as having a job. I mean, it's possible. There's people can go through a health thing and with a good attitude and with a closeness to a higher power and just go, yeah, this is serious, but I'm doing that. And it's very inspiring to watch this happen in our ranks and see people dealing with very heavy-duty things with a sense of detachment and security and faith. And it's just a wonderful thing. And that's what having a happy life is all about, is this turning things over, trusting, not having to figure them out, not having to have the answers to everything, but to allow this higher power to flow through you so that you can help the next person. And it turns out that helping the next person, whoever that might be, it doesn't have to be another alcoholic, it's just being kind to somebody on the bus or in the supermarket or anywhere, that makes us more happy than any wish list that we had. You know, well, if I only had a new Cadillac, I'd really be happy. No, you wouldn't be happy, you'd be freaked out, excited. You know. And that's after a while you realize, God, that is so off-centering. That's back being totally self-centered, and then we feel you can't hardly sleep at night, and oh no, what's going to happen to my car? Suddenly we're an extension of our car. You know, if anybody ever touched that, I'm dead. And it's way out. Everything's out of whack. So this inventory should be taken happily. This is going to free us up. This is going to get stuff out of the way so that we can go in and open this channel up so that all this stuff that people are talking about in AA can happen. So we make this fearless inventory. We've got it all written down. As we said, top of the list may be rationalization. So how do we know it's worth anything? And we find out that in order to see the truth about ourselves, we need to run it by another human being and our higher power. This is just a spiritual law. There's no other way to see the truth about ourselves without running it by somebody else. And when we do, we see it in much greater depth, and we see where we had it out of whack. This was not as serious. This is more serious. And we come to rely on running things by other people. People of very high spiritual development always insist on checking with others the guidance they feel they have gotten from God. So that's what you do. You're not weak when you run things by someone else. You're smart. It would be stupid to say, well, I'm not running anything by me. You know, just a wimp is doing that. I'll handle it alone. That's that old thing. And you can say to that person, we can tell you're handling it alone. Just by looking at you, we can see that you're handling it alone. And life becomes too much. You ever have that feeling? It's just too much. There's just too much. And here's a chance to turn that over and just find out what you're supposed to be doing the next thing. So we finally get our egos out of the way and go and have this fifth step, admit to God, to ourselves, another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs, which we talked about last week. And it's a wonderful spiritual step. It's the first time we really have to do something difficult because it involves another person. And we're apt to get some tremendous spiritual energy flowing through us as a result of a fifth step. Not always, but a great majority of people do have that sense of closeness to their higher power after they've done a fifth step because they trusted another human being. They shared secrets they thought would go to the grave with them, and they found out that they're nothing new on the planet, that we're all alike. We're all being driven by these same instinctual drives, so we're all the same. We're all wrestling with sex problems, with money problems, with relationship problems. That's what's churning around inside of us. The stupid thing to do would be to try to run that by yourself, to try and control that whole situation by yourself. That would be the stupid plan. And most of us had stupid plans when we got here to AA. And so this new plan is to open ourselves up, to use this honesty as a way to freedom. And so that's what we do in the fifth step. So now we get to this step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, and we go to the big book, and we finish this questions that we had on step 5. Have we tried to make mortar without sand? Have we really done a solid job in step 5? And then here's all of step 6. If we can answer to our satisfaction, then we then look at step 6. We've emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. And then we move right to the 7th step, prayer. And that's the end of the 6th step in the big book. And I really believe that when Bill came back about 12 years later and wrote the 12 and 12, all of a sudden he opens up the same step that I just read, and the lead-off sentence in the step 6 is, this is a step that separates the men from the boys, the girls from the women. This is like the big deal step. Well, it certainly didn't sound like it as we read it in those 2 or 3 little sentences there. So what is making this a big deal? And that's what all of tonight's discussion about is. What is making this such a big deal? We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. What is the problem with that? The problem is that deals with perfection. That's what that deals with. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And it turns out that none of us are that willing. That's why this step is so hard. And you go, of course I'm willing. These character defects are bothering me, and I want to get rid of them. And then we go, okay, well, let's just explore this a little bit and see if you want to stay with us all the way. And it kind of reminds me of the chicken and the pig that were standing outside the farmer's house looking in through the window, and he was having breakfast of ham and eggs. And the chicken said, isn't it wonderful how we serve our master? And the pig says, hey, pal, for you it's a contribution. For me, it's a major commitment. And I think most of us like to come and just make a contribution in the basket and tell people that, yes, sir, I am definitely trying to grow spiritually. That doesn't what that step says, grow spiritually. It says, try and be perfect. Oh, well, nobody can be perfect, so I'm going to go back to trying to grow spiritually, some intermediate goal in between. You see what we're saying? We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. It's like the federal deficit. Everybody want the federal deficit erased? Yes, absolutely, want it erased. Good. Well, one way to do it is to raise your taxes. Well, let's not take it all the way down. Let's remove all of it except the part that requires raising my taxes. That's what I really want to do. And so the problem comes up, well, what the heck's going on here? Turns out we like some of our character defects. That's what happens. You know, we go, yeah, I do want to get rid of anger. I want to get rid of anger. But I don't want to get rid of the right to get angry. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes it's just cool to be angry at some asshole. You know what I mean? And just, I like that feeling. I just look over and go, wait a minute. This guy's a freaking jerk over there. And so I want to keep some of the anger. I think in the book it says, I want to keep justifiable anger. That's what I want to keep, justifiable. I want to get rid of the bad anger, keep the good anger. Good anger is my anger. Bad anger is your anger. So we're going to compromise a little bit on anger. Okay, how about gluttony? Well, I wouldn't say that I'm a glutton. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm really a glutton. I mean, my life is not threatened by the way I eat, but there are certain times when I like to pig out, when I like to, if I'm depressed, I like to eat my way out of it. If I'm over anxious, I might want to use food in some way. And besides, sometimes I just like to buy an entire chocolate cake and go home and just eat it. It's not life-threatening. It's not a big goddamn deal. It's not. So I'd like to get rid of most of gluttony. Okay, so now we're getting rid of most of anger, most of gluttony. How about envy? Like to get rid of envy? Never check out anybody else's car, body, job, so you can compare and go see how unfair the world is. Look at that guy. What the hell does he get a car? I don't have a car. I'm glad I'm not as stupid as that guy. So then I feel better. You know what I mean? I'm comparing, I'm doing this, and besides, I've always made myself upset with that. But sometimes it's in the extreme, so I'd like to get rid of some of that too. I really would. I'd like to get rid of most of it, but there's going to be situations where, I'm going to have to keep some of it. What about pride? Would you like to get rid of pride? Oh, yeah, I'd like to. No, I really wouldn't want to get totally rid of pride. I mean, after all, I was in the Marine Corps, and the few, the proud, the wonderful. I mean, pride is part of being patriotic. I mean, pride. We got to get rid of the bad pride and keep the good pride. That's what I think we have to do with pride. That would be what I think is necessary. We'll get rid of the bad pride and keep the good pride. And what about lust? How about let's get totally rid of lust? Zero lust. Zero. I remember hearing somebody talk about that. Zero lust. Is that like dead? Can you still have sex? I think what you need to do is to tone it down. You want to tone lust down is what you want to do. So you see, as we go through every one of these characters, gossiping, you want to totally get rid of gossiping? Damn right, unless it's a really good story. I mean, I only do it once in a while. It's like, hell, maybe once a month at the most. Look at her. She, the whole time. I'm just a semi-gossiper compared to the other people. So, and Bill calls gossiping a polite form of character assassination. It's devastating. It can ruin AA meetings and do more damage than you can imagine. But it's fun. You know what I mean? And we go, well, look, I didn't make it up. He told me this. I'm just repeating what he told me, and just like it flowed through me. It's not. I didn't originate the damn thing. So we watch see our minds going, and you're all connecting with this. Yep. And that's what our minds are doing with this step. I just stepped in and say anything about that. It said, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. All these defects of character. So then we go, well, and I think the step is written in the extreme. That's what I think. And the worst part of the step is it's got God in there. That's the worst part. It should say, make every effort on your own to reduce the character defect. That would be more like it. So you can see our mind is struggling with this when we really try to address it. Are you willing? So we come up with the argument, wait a minute, I don't see any saints around here, and our literature says that no one has ever had all their character defects removed. So this is just a theory. Just a theory that if you got totally willing, God would remove totally a character defect. Do we have any evidence whatsoever that if we got totally willing, God would remove a character defect 100%? Unfortunately, we do. Isn't that awful? It would be great if we didn't have this example. And the example is our drinking. It was our biggest character defect, bar none. And we got entirely willing to have this removed, and it was. People all over AA will tell you it's been years since they thought about having a drink. They've been given total freedom from the biggest character defect in their lives. So now we come to the sentence in the 12 and 12 that says we are now at the riddle of our existence. This is the riddle of our existence. Why can't we achieve the same willingness to get rid of other character defects that we did with drinking? Because we did. We became willing, and it was removed. And Bill's guess at this, he doesn't say this is the answer. He said the answer is in the mind of God, but here's a guess. And the guess is, our other character defects aren't fatal. Alcohol was. And so even our instinctual drives could go along with staying alive. And alcohol was going to kill us, and we were able to achieve a degree of willingness with that particular situation that's very hard to achieve with the other character defects. So lo and behold, step 6 is a lifetime job. We are constantly trying to get more willing to have things removed from our lives. I remember being at a convention and some guy was up there talking and he said, you know what old-timers in AA say to each other? And they say, what? And they go, well, what are you doing? And the other guy says, or the other gal says, 6 and 7, 6 and 7, 6 and 7, 6 and 7. And they're just going back to step 6 and 7, seeing what else they can get rid of. What other thing that they hadn't thought of yet is hindering them having a smoother life. What other piece of garbage am I hanging on to that I haven't even inventoried that I could get rid of, and then I just move through life even smoother? So it's a constant search for something else. And it just keeps going down to a deeper level. As Bill writes, nobody wants to be lustful enough to rape. Nobody wants to be angry enough to murder. Nobody wants to be gluttonous enough to put our life in a life-threatening situation. Nobody wants to do those extremes, and so we don't. And then we congratulate ourselves on not being angry enough to murder. You know what I mean? But we haven't really, you can't take much credit for that because we don't want to go to jail. That's why we didn't murder. So it wasn't like character building, it was ass saving. You know what I mean? It had nothing to do with the program whatsoever. So we're left with this middle area where we're mucking around, and he comes up with this wonderful sentence: we tend to settle for as much perfection as will get us by. And then so each one of us takes step 6 and modifies it to, I'm going to get about this good. I know perfection's up here, but I'm shooting for right here. And I remember telling myself one time, besides, we're supposed to think of others. And if I became saint-like, it might make my neighbors feel bad because they weren't. So for their sake, I'll stay an asshole. You see what I'm saying? It's just, and I felt it was sort of a giving thing. I was being kind to them by refusing to grow in the program. So we tend to settle for as much perfection as will get us by, and that's our dilemma. We want to have an honest reputation without having to be honest. Then people will do business with us, and we can screw them occasionally, on a case-by-case basis, but not always. And so we're trying to make progress. Progress, not perfection. Well, that's not what we want to say here. We want to say we're trying for perfection. We never want to stop on this journey. So we can't have limited objectives. And I always like to tell the story of what the problem with the 6th step is. And the story is told it 1,000,000 times, so if you've heard it before, sorry. But it's about the little boy with the toothache. And he's in the 6th grade. He's a terrific baseball player. And they got the big game tomorrow, okay? And the coach said, all you got to do is get 8 hours sleep. If you're well rested, you're going to star, and we're going to cream him. So go to bed early. See you in the morning. He goes to bed at the prescribed time. He's out like a light. And about midnight, he wakes up and he can feel a little toothache starting. You know how it goes, twing, you get that little twinges? And he goes, "Ah, damn, a toothache. Just a little one. I could call my mother. She'd bring me 2 aspirin, a glass of water. 2 minutes after I take the aspirin, I'll be back to sleep." But he doesn't call his mother. He sits there hoping it'll go away by itself. And after another 30 or 40 minutes, the pain level gets up just a little bit higher. And he goes, "Well, maybe I ought to call my mother and get those aspirin. I've wasted an hour." No. I said, "I'm going to wait and see if it goes away by itself." And he waits. Doesn't go away. So after about 3.5 hours, he finally calls his mother. She brings him the aspirin. A couple minutes later, he's sound asleep, but he missed 3.5 hours sleep. It was interrupted, da-da-da. He's dead tired the next day, makes 3 errors, no hits. And the question is, what the hell's wrong with this kid? Why didn't he just say to his mother, "Bring the aspirin in"? The problem was that he knew his mother. And he knew his mother would immediately bring him the 2 aspirin, and he would go right back to sleep. But she wouldn't stop there. She would make an appointment at the dentist for him to see what's going on in the tooth. And when he got to the dentist wouldn't stop there. He would look at that tooth and he'd say, "Oh yeah, well, I'm going to have to do a little filling. It'll only take a few minutes, but while you're here, let's check all the rest of the teeth in your mouth." So he goes and gets a full dental exam, finds 3 more cavities, sets up a series of appointments, and when he finally finishes the process, he has perfect teeth. He didn't want perfect teeth. He wanted 2 aspirin. That's all he wanted was 2 aspirin. He had no interest in perfect teeth. See the dilemma that he had? I just want 2 aspirin. I do not want perfect teeth. The only help that's available from our higher power is perfect help. That's the only way that he'll operate. Would you really like that totally removed? And there's our dilemma. So all during the rest of our sobriety, we're trying to get closer and closer to this objective of becoming willing to get rid of these instinctual drives, these character defects that we like so much and are blocking us from our true nature, which is our higher power. I want to see if I left anything out. No. I didn't leave anything out, so we are at the end of the time. It is 2 minutes before 1:15. Thanks for your attention. It's a great pleasure for me to be over here doing this. I'm getting a big kick out of it. We can stand in place and say the Lord's Prayer, and I'll see you next week.